Hi everyone, and welcome back to Johnny How To, and what will probably serve as the last in this series of Photoshop tutorials in which we do a bit of a quick start guide to Photoshop in creating a collage, in this case using Star Wars imagery. So we left off the last video where we had just masked this first image, which was a plate, and if I hold down Shift and left click on this mask right here, you can see that nothing's actually gone. We've just masked it using just hidden, made certain areas invisible, and kept certain areas visible just using this layer mask right here. So I'm going to go ahead and work my way through the other images. I'll go and start off with Yoda here. I'm going to go ahead and left click and drag him in here. I'll hold down Shift and left click and drag the corners to make him a little bit larger. And I'll press Enter to place him as a layer. Now I just want to have him in this area right here. So I'm going to use the lasso tool right here to go ahead and drag around the selection I want. If you're not seeing the actual lasso tool, just hold down the left mouse button and make sure you're choosing lasso tool. So I'm just going to left click and drag around his general area and the areas that I kind of want to keep. And if I want to add more, I want to add a little bit more on this side. I'm going to hold down Shift, and you can see I get the lasso tool with the little plus icon, and I can add more to that selection. Same thing goes if I hold down Alt, it's going to get a little minus sign, and I can subtract areas away. So I want to hold down Shift and add these areas in there. And I think it looks pretty good for what I want. So I can mask this straight away, but I want to make this a soft mask. So I'm going to go and select the Select and Mask button up here. I'm going to go and view this on black, since that's what I'm going to be putting it on. And I'll go and turn up the opacity so I can see him completely on black. And I want to feather this edge. So I'll go and up the feather. And I don't want to get the top edge of this photo or get Luke's shoulder. So I'm going to go ahead and shift the edge inwards a little bit. So shifting that edge. And I'm going to down the opacity of him anyway, but I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go and click OK. And I haven't actually created this mask yet, or actually applied it to the image. It's created, set to go, but actually I have to click on the Create Layer Mask button in order to create that black and white mask, which is now right here. If I left click, I can see it, and I can see it's applied to him and cut him out. So now I want to flip Yoda horizontally, so he's facing the other way. That's the original collage was. So I'm going to go up to Edit, Transform, and flip horizontal. And you can see he flipped horizontal quite a ways, and the reason being is that if I hold down Shift to disable, hold down Shift and left click to disable that image mask, it's because he was over here and it flipped it all the way to the other side of the image as far as this being the entire image. So sometimes if you have a large image and you're masking out just a small area, if you flip horizontal or vertical, you might flip your image all the way outside of your viewing area of your composition, in which case you might just need to drag it back in and locate to where it's at. I'm going to hold down Shift and left click just to bring him back in here. But just be aware that you might actually horizontally or vertically flip your character actually out of the composition. So I'm going to do Control-0 to frame this back up. I'm going to go and move him to the upper left corner, give him a little headspace right here. And I'm going to go on down his opacity. So I'll have his layer selected. Under opacity, I'm going to down this just a little bit so he feeds in a little bit more as a ghostly figure into this collage. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. I'll move on to the next element, in which case I'll go ahead and grab the Emperor here. So the Emperor I'm going to deal with a little bit differently. So if I make him a little bit larger here, I'll press Enter to add him as a layer. So notice I have this black background right here that obviously I don't want. I want him to be down in this corner and not have this covering up the rest of the image. I could try and put him at the bottom of the stack, and that actually works pretty darn well. That might work fine. Remember, I'm putting him at the bottom of the stack. If I'm looking at a table, his layer's below the other one, so I have, if I turn off this background black right here, he's just below this plate and below Yoda, so I'm not seeing this black edge. Another way I could get rid of that, though, if I did want to have him on top of these layers, is just to use different transfer modes. So this transfer modes menu, when you have an image selected, you can use this drop down and you have a bunch of different options, some of which you use a lot, some of which you won't. But in this case, I'm really not interested in the dark areas. Even where the areas where I have the interior of him, he's over black anyway, so I don't need to really worry about those. I just want the lighter areas, which is the detail. And one thing that works well for that is the screen transfer mode. If I go and select that, you can see that I've basically got the same result, but what's actually happened is if I have it over another layer, it's dropped out the dark areas and just kept the light areas. And this can be really useful for a lot of things, but in this case, this kind of saved me from manually having to mask him out. So I'll go ahead and maybe nudge him over a bit, and I can always resize him a bit as well. Maybe nudge him down a bit. There we go. And I'll go ahead and leave him there, and again, maybe turn down his opacity. So the focus of attention is still on the plate, but I do have him in the composition as well. Maybe I'll scale him up a bit. I did Control T for free transform. I could have also done that through the menus of going to edit and then transform or free transform, but Control T is a quicker way to get to that. So I'm going to go ahead and call that done for now. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick mask right here, and I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this white border around the electricity. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm selecting this white mask. I'll paint with black, and with my brush, B for brush, I'm going to lower the opacity down. It's already pretty low, so I can just gradually, every time I left click, I'm getting rid of a little bit more and more of this white border here. And I'm actually going to up this a little bit so it's not going so slow, but I can go ahead and go through here and get rid of this white border without doing a complete 100% erase. And the reason I might want to do this is maybe I'll want to go ahead and blend it in a little bit and make it look like it's undulating a little bit more. So I'll make my brush a little bit bigger and just kind of grab different areas, and there we go. So not a big difference. I'll hold down Shift and left click to disable and re-enable that. But you can see I've kind of got it a little bit more. And if I felt like I did a little bit too much, which in this case I did, I'll go and swap my colors around. I'll press X to swap my foreground and background. I go ahead, paint with white, as long as I'm painting on the layer mask, and bring back certain areas as well. So I think that looks a little bit better. And we'll go and move on to our next element. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to our images, and let's go and do the Millennium Falcon. I'm going to drag this up and into my composition. I'll go and press return to commit that, and I'm going to go ahead and use V or the movement tool to move this up into the upper left. And I think it's a little bit too big for my liking in this composition, so I'll do Control T to free transform, and I'll Shift left click and drag on the corner to place this up here. And I could possibly do the screen process again. I don't think that would probably get me there. I'll go and try it. Yeah, that didn't really work for me. So I'll go and mask this off manually. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer mask, and I'll go ahead and paint with black with my brush tool right here. And I'll go ahead and start off with the opacity of about 40 or so and see how that does. I'll use a big soft brush, and I'll go ahead and see how this looks. So I'm going to go ahead and start to take out this edge and try and just slowly, I'm using the bracket keys to make the brush bigger or smaller, just slowly try and blend this in a little bit better with my overall image. Now let's go ahead and have that just kind of slightly accenting there, but not completely too strong. And again, maybe I'll go ahead and V for move and move it up a little bit more, just so it's not obstructing too much this imagery up here, but I can always make it a little bit bigger as well. So Control T, make it just slightly bigger. All right, so I think that doesn't look too bad. Again, I might down the opacity of this layer as a whole, so it's a little bit less attention grabbing. And so I keep the plate as the center of attention. And let's go and move on to our last layer, which is the Star Wars original release poster, which is one of my favorite posters. I'm going to go ahead and I'll just mask this first and maybe resize it later. So I'm going to go ahead and use my lasso tool again. So I'll go ahead and choose my lasso tool. And I like this bolt coming up and on the sides. So I'll go ahead and grab these guys. And I'll go ahead and go around the droids and leave a little bit of the mountaintop here. And do I want to leave Darth Vader in here? No, I'll go ahead and take Darth Vader out for now. I'll just try and keep this general area right here. All right, so that's just a rough version of this. I'll go ahead and choose Select and Mask. I can see it on black. I'm going to feather this edge quite heavily. You can see I'm bringing back some areas that I don't really want, but I'll get rid of those later on. And I'll go and start off with this as my initial masking. So I'll go and click OK. To actually add this as a mask, I have the layer selected. I'll click on the Layer Mask tool. And let's go ahead and go through the process of getting rid of the rest of this. So I'm going to go ahead and just view this on black. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off these other layers. I'll left click and drag over the eye icons just so I can see it on black. I'll press V for move and move this guy down, and I'll continue masking from here. So I'll make sure I'm selecting my mask, painting with the brush with black. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these areas I know for sure I don't want. So I'll just paint with a 100% opacity black brush on the mask and just go ahead and get rid of these areas. And I don't think there's too much more I want to get rid of completely. Now I just kind of want to blend it in. So I'll go ahead and now I'll swap my, well, I'll just keep the same black, but I'll down the opacity. something maybe like 30 or 40 or 50 or something like that. I'll use a large brush. I'll just try and make it a little bit more subtle as far as how it's feeding in to the imagery that I'm going to place it next to in just a second. All right, so I think that looks kind of cool. It looks looking decent enough for now, at least. And remember, I can always toggle back and forth, painting white and black using the X key, and that will go ahead and reveal or hide different areas of the image. So I don't want to lose R2 and C3PO here, so I'll size my brush down with bracket keys, press X to paint with white. I'll go ahead and bring them back. And then I can go back to using black again and get rid of this white border here. All right, so I think it looks good for now. I'm going to go ahead and maybe bring back a little bit more of that. And I'll go and turn on the rest of my layers. So left click and drag over the eye icons. We'll bring those back. And let's go ahead and relocate this layer. I'll go and choose my move tool and move them down to the corner. And I do want them to be a little bit bigger. So I'll do Control T or Command T on a Mac to size this up. Hold down Shift and left click to scale it uniformly or proportionally rather. And I'll go ahead and get this. Yeah, that looks okay, I think. I will do about there. Kind of doubling up our R2s there, but we'll go ahead and do that for now. And I'll go and blend this in just slightly more. So I'll go and select my mask, paint with black, use my brush tool. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of a little bit more of Darth Vader's helmet. And of course, we could go in and really tweak this and get it really nice and perfect, but I don't want to take too much more time in this tutorial. If I don't want to double up on R2s here, I could always go to the actual plate itself and size up my brush and paint with black at a low opacity. And maybe I'll just take R2 out of this one right here. And I don't think that looks too bad because we still have him right here. And maybe now I can nudge this up a little bit more, the actual Star Wars poster layer. I'll use the arrow keys in this case, up arrows. Now actually I feel like this blends in the composition a little bit better. Maybe size this a little bit, move it down. And we're not doubling up on our R2s anymore. All right, so I'll press Enter to place that. And I just don't like how this bolt is leading too far into there. So I'm going to go ahead and paint with the brush on the mask. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of blend this in a little bit more. And there we go. So I think we've basically got what I'm looking for in this tutorial. And we've probably replicated our original fairly well. Let's go to our original file here really quick. So here was the original I did way back in 1999, I think it was. We don't have our Anakin guy, but for the most part, using much better techniques than I did back then, we've roughly recreated this collage and pretty darn quickly as well. The last touch you could do would be adding stars in the background. I think that'll look better than a pure black background, which you could just go on Google Images, find stars, and drop that in. And that would just be your bottom layer. You could either put them on top of the black background, or you could just put them above that and layer them on there. So you could just get rid of this black background, or you could just layer some stars on top of it. For now, I think we'll call this one done. There's still some things I would fix, like I still see a little bit of the border left from this plate here, but overall, we'll call this complete. Thank you for watching Johnny How To, and I'll see you in this next series of videos.